Hi there, welcome back to the Dan Cave and welcome to part 3 of the Aoshima 24th scale Nissan Fairlady Z Nismo 2007 build series. So part 3 is going to get us to the very end, and we'll show the final kit and some pictures at the very end. So just to recap, part 1 covered the bodywork, part 2 covered the chassis and interior. So in this part we'll put all that together plus all the additional bits that still have to be done, like the clear parts, the lights, some of the trim on the outside, etc. So all that finally comes together, and that'll be part 3, and this is the conclusion of the build series. So thank you to everyone who's watched so far, thank you to everyone who's liked and subscribed so far. If you haven't, please give a thumbs up, please give a subscribe, and I'd like to thank everyone for watching. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the video, and we'll see you later. So the 2K, which was done back in part 1, has been sat around for about 4 days now. So one of the jobs we need to get done before we progress with anything else is to get it flattened back a little bit using some Micromesh. I think it's 6,000, 8,000 and 12,000 progressively. So that'll help get rid of any dust spots if they're there. It can also help knock back the kind of thickness of the 2K, because sometimes the 2K can look quite thick and look quite toy-like. Although I think in this case I'm actually quite pleased with the results. So on the bonnet, there's a little bit of a kind of blemish on the bonnet. It was quite big. I'm not sure it's a dust spot, so I'm just trying to knock it back a little bit just to make it less obvious. So basically I'm using some clean water to wet the Micromesh and just running it back and forth, and then I'll progress through the grades through 6,000, 8,000 and on to 12,000. And once all this is complete, we'll then go back in and start to polish up using some Novus polishing compounds. So it's extremely rare that you'll get a completely blemish-free finish. There'll always be some dust. I mean, obviously, you know, the work you do to clean your spray area, using your spray booth, using a box to store it in while it's curing, all those things contribute to helping keep the amount of dust down. But it's rare that you get none whatsoever. Hence, this is an important process and will always pretty much get done in nearly every kit that's done in this way with 2K. So here I'm just inspecting the work. So after you've kind of gone over with a grade, dry it off, see how it looks, and then progress on to the next grade. So as you can see, I'm not entirely satisfied, so I go back down to an 8,000 grit, and we'll work our way through the grits and compounds like this. Eventually we'll get to the stage where we're reasonably happy with how it looks. Make sure to give it a good dry off, get rid of all that moisture, and just using some kitchen towel, and then I'm just using the lights on the desk. Use them to your advantage, help you look across the finish and make sure I'm happy with what I've got. So that little blemish is still there. I think it may actually be in the decal, so I'm not going to progress any further because I don't want to burn through that. So I'm reasonably happy with that, and I can move on to the bodywork. So the process on the bodywork is exactly the same. I'm starting with the door, so starting with the 6,000 grit, progressively work our way through it, following exactly the same process as was done for the bonnet. It is, of course, essential as you're carrying on through, just to keep kind of drying off, checking the surface, then go back with wet Micromesh again, do some work, check it, dry it off, check it again, and just keep doing that until you're happy with the finish. Ultimately, on every bit, you want to end up on the 12,000 grit, I mean, barely makes any impact on the surface, but it does make an impact. It is obvious. And then the final step, which we'll then get to, is then a final polish using Novus compounds. So once again, just using a nice back and forwards motion, progress through the grits, keep that surface wet when you're sanding. Dry it down frequently to check the surface, make sure you're happy with it. Obviously, be very careful on any edges, particularly the crease line on the door. You need to be careful you don't burn through. Any edges around the sills, etc. So now I'm just going around checking everything, and I'm happy with everything. So it's time to move on to the polish stage. So we're starting with the Novus polish number 2, which is the medium one, which is for fine scratches. We don't need to use I think it's number 3 for heavy scratches. There's no heavy scratching left after the sanding process. So again, we're just using a reasonably liberal amount. There are consequences to using a liberal amount. It will get in all those kind of panel lines, and that'll have to be cleaned out. But we're just working that down, rubbing it in until basically it dries, and then we'll use another piece of the cloth, clean part, just to buff all that off. So still a little bit wet. We're still just drying it in. And then we just move to a completely dry section of the cloth we're using. And that brings up that nice shine. The very final shine will come with the last polishing compound, the number 1. So then it's on to the same process on the other side. A little bit of polishing compound down. Work that into the surface, work it in until it's completely dry. And then just buff it off. So overall, I mean, the surface finish was pretty good from the 2K. There's a couple of blemishes in places, and because we've sanded it back, that polish does bring back that nice shine. There are a few areas where I think there's still a few micro scratches around, but again, working your way through with the polish will get rid of them and any remnants from the Micromesh. Of course, obviously, wherever we've used this, we will need to go back over with an old toothbrush to get rid of that excess. So it's the same process on the bonnet. We only sanded one section of the bonnet, so just that middle bit needs a little bit of a polish. Again, same process, work the polish in, work it in until it's dry, and then buff it off with a clean part of the cloth. And then these ones are disposable polishing cloths, so they'll be binned, and a new one will be used for this stage, which is the Novus polish number 1. And that just brings out that very kind of final shine to the product. So yeah, so pretty happy with how the kind of 2K has come out. So once all that work is done, now it's time to break out the masking tape again. So the usual process, detacking. Now this is not actually Tamiya tape. This is some tape that I got from eBay. I think it's a washi tape, similar in feel to Tamiya tape. I've been testing it recently because I got some from eBay. Works pretty well. No issues with it pulling up any paint or anything like that, but still detack it just to be sure. And here I'm just masking up the sills and front splitter and rear diffuser, because all those parts need to get painted in a satin black finish. So working my way around, just burnishing down the edge with a cotton bud, just to make sure I get a good seal. So now I'm just using some wider tape basically and just cutting out little sections so I can basically mask off in around the kind of harder to mask areas in around the rear diffuser. But again, patience, a bit of time. It's not a difficult job. It just is a little bit time consuming. So for the window seals, I'm using Azu tape. I think this might be the 0.5 mil. Again, just running that along where the window seal rubbers are, and that'll go right the way around the windscreen, and use some of the regular masking tape then to block out the rest of the areas. So once I've masked all those sections, I think there's another rubber around the rear windscreen. So once all of them are kind of blocked in, I can then fill in the rest of the model completely in masking tape like this. So as I'm going to be spraying the semi-gloss satin black anyway, I'll do the windscreen, the clear parts at the same time. So Aoshima provide a window mask set. And actually in this instance it fits pretty well. They don't always, sometimes they can be a little bit short. Sometimes you may need to cut them up. But in this case, the fit is pretty much spot on. So again, once those window mask set are on, the rest of the transparent pieces will just get blocked out with regular masking tape. So then it's on to spraying. So I'm using the UMP Apex airbrush. I'm using some Revell Aqua Satin Black, which has been thinned with UMP thinner. So as with all the kind of airbrush kind of process, just start off with a light coat, begin to build that colour up, and basically pass over as many coats until I'm satisfied that I've got a good deep satin black finish. Go around all the sills, front splitter, rear diffuser, around the window seals, and then the pillars on the door as well. So once I'm happy I've covered all those areas, we can get on to the transparent clear parts. So same process, build up light dusting progressively, just build that up slowly until you get a nice deep black finish. And of course, don't forget with the clear parts, you really want to kind of have a good number of coats just to make sure that those black areas are completely opaque. So we'll just work our way through. And then after the, I don't know, hour of masking and 10 minutes in the airbrush, it's the 5-minute job of pulling off all that masking tape. But it is quite satisfying because obviously you get a much better idea of how the final body shell is going to look with them nicely trimmed out areas in satin black. So there's a piece of mesh comes with a kit, so that goes inside the diffuser at the back. There's no template in the instructions, so I'm just using the outline from the rear diffuser on a bit of masking tape. Just use a little bit of pencil just to mark out the areas I need, and I'll cut out a shape from the masking tape and use that as a guide on the mesh. So stick it down to the mesh, use the scissors to cut around it, keep it a little bit oversized because obviously it's easier to trim it back if you need to. And then use a little bit of CA glue just to bond that mesh to the inside of the diffuser to rear face. So now it's on to the light clusters. So there's an individual little lens, clear part, which goes into the front lights. So I'm just using a little bit of micro scale crystal clear, which is basically a PVA glue. And then there's an indicator bulb in each of those front clusters, so that gets a quick dab of Tamiya clear orange. So once they're nice and dry, we can fit them to the inside of the body shell. So for that, I'm going to use the 5-second curing UV curing resin. So I'm just putting a few dabs of that in around the front and back locating points, and use the UV light that comes with it just to cure that resin. As it says on the box, 5 seconds of that and it'll be nicely cured. So that's repeated for all the light clusters, front and rear. So now I've got a little bit of Vallejo Model Air Silver, and that's going to be used to paint the side repeaters and the inside of the rear indicators. So using a fine brush, Vallejo Model Air Silver certainly brush paints pretty well, so does the job perfectly. So even though it probably won't be seen, the inside of the roof is going to get painted in matte black, just to basically make sure if anyone is ever looking, they can't see that kind of mixture of blue and white on the inside. I'll also kind of paint down the inside of the pillars as well. Just helps finish off the interior a little bit. So that's easily done with a brush in this case. So I'm brush painting Revell Aqua matte black, a little bit of water and flow improver just to help it brush a little bit better. And that works absolutely perfect for this job. And that's that bit done. So now for the clear parts, the rear view mirror needs to be mounted. So I'm just using a little bit of the crystal clear again. Let it go a little bit tacky, and then just mount that rear view mirror directly on it. So the overall clear parts can then go inside the body shell. So once again, I'm going to use the UV resin to basically set that inside the body shell. I think this is probably one of the poorer fitting parts on the kit. I don't think the glass fits as maybe it does as well as some Tamiya kits, but it's okay. The clarity is pretty good, but the fit is not brilliant. But the UV glue does its job in this case and sets it very well. So same process, 5 seconds curing at each spot, and that's not going to go anywhere. So once all this is complete, that's pretty much all the interior parts. And we can now basically mate the body shell to the running gear and interior that we did in part 2. So the fit is pretty good. It's not overly tight. There's a little bit of a squeeze needed just to get the tabs at the front and rear to slot into their locating positions. But it goes in reasonably easily. A little bit of pressure and it just pops in. And there we have it. So now we can start working on some of the exterior lights, which still have to be done. So that there's some clear orange going on the rear indicator clusters. So the inside of them was painted silver earlier. So the outside just gets a quick coat of Tamiya clear orange. For the headlights, I'm just running a black Sharpie around the outside. Just gives that appearance of the seal rubbers that generally go around headlight clusters. And that's repeated for all the light positions on the outside, so front and the rear lights as well. So with a little bit of PVA crystal clear glue, just going to dab that in place. Make sure it's located. And same process for both sides, and basically do the same on the rear as well. So next up is the rear spoiler, and that once again is using crystal clear to attach it. So there's no positive location points for the rear spoiler, so careful placement is required. But at least using PVA, if you get it wrong, you can clean it up very easily. both wing mirrors, little drop of PVA on the back, because they'll be visible from the other side of the glass. At least the PVA will dry clear and make that attachment less obvious. And the fit was spot on for both of these. So next up is the wiper blades. So there's one on the rear and two wiper blades on the front. A little bit of PVA glue again. These were dry fit beforehand. It is always worth checking, particularly if you use 2K, because it's quite a thick clear coat. It's worth checking that the holes haven't become undersized because of the 2K, and that little parts like this will pop in their locating points. In this case, they fit fine. So next, a little bit more crystal clear. So that's going to round the inside of where the bonnet is going to be fit to. So this is the one part that probably didn't fit as well as I kind of hoped. There is a little bit of a ridge around it. So I'm just using a little bit of masking tape to try and hold it down while that PVA sets. And hopefully that will minimize kind of any obvious signs of a lip. But I guess this is the one area where Aoshima vary the parts from different kits. So it's got a different bonnet to the standard car, different bumpers. So door handles have been sprayed up using, I think it's Revell Aqua Silver, thinned with UMP thinner. That's just a case of getting the correct side with the correct handle, and a little drop of PVA glue in the locating holes, and the same on the other side. So one of the other little custom jobs I did while printing the decals was to print up two Marvel logos for the number plates. So Aoshima provide lovely little metal number plates, and just a decal cut to approximately the size of the number plate goes straight on it. And again, as per the printed decals earlier, these worked absolutely fine, worked like normal decals. So the usual process: they're soaked in water, released from the backing paper, squeeze out the excess. And once again, it's the crystal clear PVA that's used, front and rear. And we just adjust ever so slightly. And now we're down to the final three parts. So there's the chrome exhaust tips, which go onto the back box. Once again, crystal clear PVA is used. I think one of the benefits of using PVA is you don't risk getting a CA glue fingerprint on your kit. PVA glue will come off very easily if you do get any fingerprints anywhere. And then just this unengined guard scuff tray, and just some debris, and that's it. That's the kit complete. So now let's have a look at some of the photos and see how the final model has turned out. So all in all, I've really enjoyed this kit from Aoshima. I've enjoyed the little bit of a challenge that came with printing the decals. It's made a really enjoyable build, doing something a little bit different. If you've enjoyed the video, please give a like. If you want to see any more, please give a subscribe. Thank you to everyone who's watched so far, and thank you to everyone who's subscribed so far. So thank you, and see you again soon.